You watch your breakfast on Sky News. We're going to look through the papers in a few moments' time, but first let me tell you what's come up with Kay from 7. The Levelling Up Minister Jim McMahon will be representing the government today at 7:15, whilst the new Shadow Secretary for Science, Andrew Griffith, will join the show at 8:15. 7:45, Kay will be speaking to the first double above-knee amputee to summit North America's highest peak, and the chair of the Nursing and Midwifery Council is in the studio at 8:45 to respond to reports that said that staff experienced racism, discrimination or bullying. That's all coming up from 7. Right now, time for the news review. Mari is not here. She's dashed over to Downing Street. We'll hear from her later in the programme, but we are joined by the political journalist Alicia Fitzgerald, who gets to stay in the dry whilst Mari dashes out into the rain of damp London this morning. Lots of announcements of every new thing that's either being called upon the government to do or that the government wants to do. It's that point in the cycle now, isn't it? And Rachel Reeves in the Financial Times making it clear that there's no money.
I was going to say this is a really good precursor story to the rest of them actually, because it's Rachel Reeves basically just doing a little bit of damage control and trying to say that yes, I want to be an effective Chancellor, I want to make bold decisions, however, I have to do that with the backdrop in mind. And she's basically continuing the message that the Labour campaign had throughout the whole 6 weeks in saying that things will take some time and that there will be a lot of difficult decisions that have to be made. I mean, Labour have said that they want to help the NHS, we've got the issue of defence spending, we've got building new homes. I mean, there's so many different areas that are going to be really pulling at the public purse strings, and Rachel Reeves has to make some big decisions in the next few weeks.
And the thing that she and Keir Starmer have said is central to all of this is growing the economy. But the thing is, that does not happen overnight. You can cut a budget in a second, but growing the economy is a much longer prospect.
Absolutely. I think that was what was really interesting in both her speech yesterday and Keir Starmer's first press conference that he gave on Saturday, is that he said, and she very much echoed this, there are some things that can happen overnight. For example, Wes Streeting can call up the junior doctors and begin negotiations. What you can't do overnight is reach the final conclusion. And he said the same with prisons. You can't build a prison overnight, but what you can do is work out where you can pull and where you can give and where you can take. So they're walking a really, really difficult line. It's their first few weeks in government, and they've got to work out what the priorities are and what has to go.
We have the kind of start of the new Parliament, and then August they then have off as usual. Then conference season. So at some point, Rachel Reeves has also got to squeeze in a budget amongst all of that.
Yes, and they did keep ruling out an emergency budget, and before they got elected they kept saying there won't be a budget before autumn and there will just be the usual autumn one. But the thing is it so much depends on what happens. You know, the economic backdrop changes so often, as we've seen over the past Parliament also, so anything really can happen. And I think the pressure will be on for Labour and the economy, because although they've tried super hard to get the public to trust them more with the economy, and that definitely has worked to an extent, there is still a big proportion of the electorate who feel like Labour are not trustworthy enough when it comes to public spending.
There's a really nice disparity here between the Financial Times front page and the Times front page. So the Financial Times, Reeves sounds the alarm on finances. The Times, pressure on Starmer to raise defence spending.
Well, this is exactly what we mean. There's just going to be so much pressure on Starmer and on the government to raise spending in so many areas, but this is particularly important. This is about defence spending, especially in light of what happened in Kyiv the other day. And Labour have said that they will commit to increasing defence spending to 2.5% of GDP when circumstances allow. So they got a lot of flack for that actually in the lead up to this, because the Conservatives said that they would do it by 2030. Labour say they'll only do it when the economic backdrop allows. And now lots of people, lots of military experts are coming forward and saying that simply isn't enough. We need a firm date for when that's going to happen, and perhaps we even need to increase it a bit more. But obviously, as we were just saying, it is so difficult. They've got to have some kind of trade-off and decide what the priorities are.
And there's a quote here in the Times from General Sir Patrick Sanders, a former head of the army, and he says that 2.5% is too small, that it should be closer to 3%.
Yes, but this is the thing, it's where do you draw the line? Because if you do increase it to 3%, then something else is going to have to be taken away, something else is going to have to go without. So defence is going to be really difficult for Labour, because it's something that is clearly growing in importance given the events around the globe, but but something that they're yet to really put a massive focus on.
And the Times marrying up that call for defence spending with that image from Ukraine of Kiev there, a hospital likened to Great Ormond Street here in the UK, children's hospital there that was damaged hugely. You can see the collapsed roof in the centre of your screen by strikes by Russia for its part. Moscow says it was striking military targets. I'll let you make up your own mind whether a children's hospital constitutes one of those. Moving into the Times, a little bit of focus on the shadow cabinet now, as we're having to get used to calling them. David Cameron didn't stick around for very long, did he?
I mean, it feels like just yesterday that he made that
Getting out that 4x4 and Dave and Kay going, it's David Cameron.
Yeah. Oh, it was just crazy. I remember that so vividly. But that seems like just a few months ago, and actually it kind of was in the scheme of how long people usually hold these roles. David Cameron is not going to be the shadow foreign secretary, and the reason for that he cited was that obviously he is in the House of Lords, and the job of the shadow cabinet is really to scrutinise the work of the actual cabinet, and you know, viewers will remember normally in the dispatch box in the Commons they are stood head to head facing each other and having some kind of fiery debate, and obviously if Cameron had been in the Lords that wouldn't have been so possible, so he has stood down. The other notable missing person was Richard Holden. He was the Conservative Party chairman, and he was very much in the headlines just a few weeks ago because he got parachuted from his Durham seat down to a safe seat in Essex, and that was seen as pretty controversial. The reason he gave for that was that because he's the party chairman and that he needs to keep his seat because he's got an important role. He's kept his seat, and now he has stood down from that role, so I'm sure that will face a bit of scrutiny over the next
Very much so. But other names that people recognise: James Cleverly, Shadow Home Secretary still, Victoria Atkins, Shadow Health, Tom Tugendhat, Shadow Security Minister, amongst some of those names there, potential contenders for leadership. What isn't clear is still the timescale for Rishi Sunak.
No, yes, we've still not got any kind of scale about when we will see a new Conservative leader. Obviously, Rishi Sunak said he would stand down once a new leader comes, but there's some complexities around it, because normally this is dealt with by the 1922 committee. That's a group of Conservative MPs. Most of them have lost their seats. Most of them don't exist anymore. So that suggests that maybe we need a slightly new system in order to elect a new Conservative Party leader before we do that. So Sunak's got quite a lot of logistical things to sort out before he can leave.
On this programme yesterday, the Shadow Business Secretary now, Kevin Hollinrake, MP for Thirsk and Moulton, was saying he thought time was the thing that needed to be given in this process and nothing to restart before the autumn, and ideally a new leader by the end of the year. Whether there'll be an interim leader looking after things, time will tell.
Well, it seems Sunak doesn't seem too keen on an interim leader. Right. The rumour was very much if there was going to be one, it would have happened immediately. The day after the election, Sunak would have said, I'm stepping down, let's bring in someone, potentially someone like Ian Duncan Smith, former Conservative Party leader. His name was swirling around a bit, but he decided not to do that. I think his priority at the moment is just having a level ship, and he just wants to have the most continuity as possible and not have another Conservative leader. Another, indeed.
Lots of focus hugely during the course of the election on the NHS. That came, in many respects, the central issue. Front page of The Guardian here this morning: Labour to fix front door of NHS by diverting billions to local surgeries. And this is Wes Streeting saying that millions of patients will be able to see the same family doctor at every appointment. Less than 10% of the £165 billion NHS budget in England spent on primary care, a share that's been falling despite a record demand to GP surgeries themselves.
I think that's quite a shocking statistic and will surprise a lot of people. Less than 10% of the quite large NHS budget spent on primary care, and primary care is the thing that probably touches and impacts people in the most easy way and visible way to see it. It's, not being able to get a GP appointment. It's the under-resourcing for those face-to-face medical emergencies, and that's where there seems to be not an awful lot of money going into that. So Wes Streeting saying that he wants to funnel some of the money away from potentially the higher up places in the NHS, the more administrative side of it potentially, and more into the actual primary care side. So that'll be interesting to see if that works.
I think the thing that needs to be married up with this is education, though, at the same time, because I have family members who work in the NHS, particularly in the ambulance service, and the number of calls that go to the ambulance service 999 that don't need to go down that route. But to solve that, you can't just pump money into the system. You've also got to educate people. There's got to be campaigns to try and tell people what to do. I'm going to move on just to the Daily Mail, the page 5 of the Daily Mail, just a little bit of working from beach to finish the morning with. This is 6 million extending their holidays by taking the laptop with them.
Yeah, this
Quite
is all
envious.
about this, working from home, flexible working, discussion. And this is what it's like, working from beach. At first I thought they meant in England, and I thought, good luck with that. There's absolutely no chance of going to any
Absolutely
beach
not
in
this
England
year,
at the moment.
no.
But this was definitely referring to people going on holidays abroad, but still not taking their holiday days and taking their laptops with them. And it says you run the risk of irking rather colleagues who are stuck at their desks, and I'm sure that's probably true.
And particularly if the time zone means you don't respond to any emails until about 3 in the afternoon as well. I'm just envious.
I'm worried about the glare on the laptop. How are you doing that with the sun?
And sand into the keys as well. There's lots of potential issues. Anyway, Alicia, really appreciate making time for us this morning. Thank you so much. We'll be with you all through the course of the morning. Kay here from 7 with all the day's top stories. We'll have all the latest in the world of politics. Also, there's Metro Mayors going to Downing Street. Stay with us on Sky Breakfast.